Hello and welcome to Story of the Day for Year 3 to Year 6, and we are picking up Chapter 16 of Grandpa's Great Escape by David Walliams. Dring! The next thing Jack knew, his alarm was going off, as it did every weekday morning at 7 o'clock. As he lay on the top bunk in his bedroom, his hand felt around for the old tin wind-up RAF clock, and he turned it off. With his eyes still closed, the boy suddenly remembered that his grandfather had gone to sleep on the bottom bunk. He lay there for a moment, listening out for the old man's snoring. That's strange, thought Jack. He couldn't hear a thing. Yet he could still feel the key safely hidden under his pillow. The door must still be locked. There was no way Grandpa could have got out. All of a sudden, Jack realised it was cold, painfully cold. The top of his blanket felt icy. The model planes above his head were lightly dusted with frost. It must be the same temperature inside as it was out. At that moment, the winter wind whipped up, making his curtains flap. The window must be open. For a moment, Jack couldn't bear to look below at the bottom bunk. Slowly, he summoned up the courage. He took a deep breath before peeping down. The bottom bunk was empty. The bed was so neatly made, it was like it had never been slept in. That was very Grandpa. Despite making a daring escape in the middle of the night, he couldn't leave the bed unmade. His time in the RAF had made him a stickler for everything, being spick and span. Leaping down from the bunk, Jack dashed to the window. He looked along the row of frosted gardens for some sign of the old man. Next, his eyes searched all the trees, the roofs, and even the lampposts, in case his grandfather had climbed up one of them. Nothing. Beyond the gardens, sat in the park. It was still early and empty of people. The wide expanse of grass was covered with a thick layer of frost, and Jack couldn't make out any footprints. Grandpa was long gone. Chapter 17. Nothing. Days and nights went by with no sign of the old man. The townsfolk formed search parties. The police were called out. Jack even made a tearful appeal for his safe return on the local news. But nothing. On the boy's instruction, all of the highest points for miles around were checked. The tops of hills, roofs, and any tall buildings, the church spire, of course, and even electricity pylons. Nothing. Jack designed a missing poster for his grandfather. He had hundreds photocopied at school and trundled around the town on his trike, sticking them up to every lamppost he could find. Missing. Please help, Mr. Arthur Bunting. But nothing. Every time the telephone or the doorbell rang, Jack would race to answer it, praying it would be news about Grandpa. But there was no trace of him. The boy felt guilty and would cry himself to sleep at night. His mum and dad told Jack not to blame himself, but over and over again he wished that he had listened to them. Perhaps an old folks' home really was the best place for Grandpa. At least he would be safe there. The boy hated to admit it. It seemed Grandpa was now far too much of a handful for the family to look after. And as each day passed, the sense of absence grew deeper. Yet, after a while, Jack realised something awful. The world kept turning. His mum and dad went back to work. The people of the town returned to their lives. The missing old man had become old news. Most of all, it was the not knowing that was agonising. Had Grandpa gone forever? Or was he lost somewhere and in need of help? Reluctantly, the boy returned to school. It was really hard to concentrate at the best of time, but now Jack's mind really was elsewhere. Whatever the subject, all he could think about was his grandpa. After school day, he would stop up at Raj's to see if there's any news. Ding! Went the bell as Jack entered the newsagents. It was now a whole week after his grandfather's disappearance. "Ah, young Master Bunting, my favourite customer, coming out of the cold, please," called Raj from behind his counter. In such a low mood, all the boy could muster was a polite nod in the newsagent's direction. "I scoured all the papers again today. But I'm sorry to say there has been no sign of your grandfather, said Raj. I just don't understand, replied Jack. When he went missing before, we always found him. This time he's disappeared, like into thin air. Raj mused on this thought for a while and, to aid concentration, picked up a lolly from the counter and popped it in his mouth. The man's face grimaced a little. It was clear he didn't like the taste, and he quickly popped it back with the others for sale. Ooh. There had been rumours amongst the kids at school that many of Raj's sweets came pre-sucked. Now the boy knew for sure. Strangely, it didn't make him like the newsagent any less. Your grandfather is a war hero, says Raj, thinking out loud. Yes. He even has the Distinguished Flying Cross, agreed Jack. That's one of the highest honours a pilot could be awarded. So, I cannot believe a man like that would just give up on life. He's out there somewhere. I know it. Ding! The boy left the shop, with a spring in his step for the first time in days. Now at least Jack felt there was some hope. The drone of an aeroplane's engine echoed across the sky. Looking up for a moment, Jack half expected to see his grandfather. But of course it wasn't Spitfire, just an anonymous jumbo jet. Up, up, up and away, the boy recited to himself. Raj was right. Grandpa must be out there. But where? And we will pick up tomorrow for chapter 18 to see if Jack has had any success in finding Grandpa.